Bom dia.
Good morning. This is September 22nd. People who will give this general overview, both from the private and public sectors. First, we will have Marina Grossi. She's an economist, and she is the president of CEBEDS since 2010. She's an important advocate of the carbon market in Brazil, and she talks to an important slice of the Brazilian GDP in their climate commitments. She will tell us a bit about the advancements and how these advancements also depend on governments. Then from the public side, we will have Eduardo Taveira. He's Environment Secretary in the state of Amazonas. He has a sound academic background, and he is currently the president of a forum that unites all secretaries, environment secretaries from the region of the Amazon and Brazil. They will have 5 minutes each. Marina, please, you may begin. Good morning, everyone. This is Good Morning in Brazil. Thank you, Ana Cristina. It is a pleasure to be here representing 80 large companies. We are the Brazilian arm of the Business Council for Sustainable, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And in Brazil, the Amazon has become really important just because of what Ana Cristina had just mentioned. We are on the brink of a new moment. That's when the climate emergency has become an imperative. It's transformative. This is the main year, mostly for Brazil. 3 large COP summits, and Brazil can contribute a lot. We have the biodiversity, the climate, and the food summits. In all of those, Brazil will play a very important role. I am going to tell you a bit about what the business sector is doing and contributing to this agenda. But first, let me give you a bit of context. Deforestation, like Ana Cristina said, is the elephant in the room. Deforestation represents about 48% of our emissions profile. This is completely different from the rest of the world. Out of these 48%, 98% it's illegal deforestation. If we were to finish with deforestation, we would meet our commitments of our NDC. NDC is our commitment in the Paris Agreement. We would contribute with 80% of our NDC until 2030. So this is a huge problem, and we have solutions for it. Brazil knows how to fight deforestation. This is not connected to the development of the region. Between 2010 and 2012, when deforestation decreased, GDP increased. Between 2014 and 2016, when deforestation increased, per capita GDP decreased. So there's no correlation. It's important to make that clear so that we can see what is possible and what is important to be done. On July 7th last year, the business sector in Brazil came together and began with communication, and Karina is going to share this with you. It became a movement. Over 90 CEOs signed this commitment, over 5 institutions from the private sector. This is an articulation between all these CEOs. There are 7 programmatic points in this communication, and currently we have a web portal where we show the advancements, the steps forward. These steps forward show that we have solutions. We know how to fight deforestation, and this statement says, in Brazil, and we know that this is not the reality in most countries, in Brazil, we can preserve and produce at the same time. And that can bring resources, whether in carbon credits, in paying for environmental services, valuing the forest, cosmetics, the cosmetic industries. Keivan is here. Both companies have signed this commitment, Natura and Marfrig, so we can produce and preserve at the same time. There's something that will be discussed in Glasgow, nature-based solutions. According to the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, solutions based on nature can represent 37% of the solutions that we have in the Paris Agreement to reach 2 Celsius degrees. Brazil is a super diverse country, the largest super diverse country, and we see that we can be protagonists in that area as well. Although we are a super diverse country, we have in the international market of biodiversity chains, it moves $165 billion. We have the participation of Amazon biodiversity participating with just 0.2%. So the private sector is aware of the advancements and the business opportunities that we have in that area. I was just saying that this is a moment of climate emergency. We have to show clear actions. Brazil is a cleaner country than most countries, and we are the only country in the world that can meet its NDCs by 2050 without new technologies, just by fighting what we have mentioned. Low carbon agriculture and fighting illegal deforestation. However, we need practical action. Since 2017, the carbon market, we are together with the finance ministry showing that the carbon market can be implemented. The industry is saying, yes, I want to be regulated by this market. I want to play this game. This game is happening in 25% of the world because I can win. We are cleaner and we have resources. So this is a very important point, and we did not move forward in the finance ministry side, but it did move forward in the Congress. We have a bill now going on, and the CEBEDS is working with this bill, Bill 528, to implement a carbon market. This would clearly show that we are moving forward and that we have the conditions to progress in that area. So yes, we have the knowledge, we know how to move forward, and certainly most of the resources that Brazil can have coming from this new economy, they will come from actions connected to this new economy. I just want to finalize with a research from ICS, the Climate and Society Institute. It shows that this agenda is also part of our politics and Brazilian society as a whole. 85% of surveyed people state that environmental protection of the Amazon is decisive for 2022 elections next year. These are young people between 16 and 24 years of age. 83% of them say that candidates that have specific plans for the Amazon will have their votes. And that's how I finish my presentation. Thank you very much. We will now give the floor to Mr. Eduardo Taveira, Environment Secretary of the State of Amazonas. Good morning, Ana Cristina. It is a pleasure to see you once again, and it's a pleasure also to hear Marina Grossi's contribution, an important contribution from the private sector. As you have said, Ana Cristina, my name is Eduardo Taveira. I am the Environment Secretary of the State of Amazonas. and I am also representing the presidency of the Governor's Climate Forest Task Force. This year, we are building an action plan that is called Manaus Action Plan, precisely to lead the future of this global network. And I wanted to mention the challenges that we face as a state connected to the reality that both Marina and Ana Cristina mentioned, increasing deforestation and fires. The state of Amazon was hardly hit in the last few years by this increase in the south part of the state. Our connections with Rondônia, Mato Grosso, and Pará, that region was hardly hit. And this is a demand that we have. Also, we see two periods, very strong periods, or the impacts of the pandemic. So we have to make the connection between these things. This is a scenario of economic recovery. There's a strong pressure for growth and for land use in this region, and it's the most complex region that we have. A different human occupation that is different from the rest of the region. However, the greatest challenge that states face is connected to the reduction of emissions and the challenge, the ongoing challenge. At the same time, we have to reduce emissions, and we also face the challenge of reducing poverty at the same time. Over 50% of the population of the Amazon is under the poverty line, actually 25% under the poverty line. 50% is at the poverty line. When we talk to other governors and to the GCFTF, this is common in countries that have high concentration of biodiversity. These highly biodiverse regions, they are usually poor from a development, social development perspective. So this is the first step. The great challenge of state policies is to find ways to ensure a decrease in emissions, a decrease in deforestation and fires, and at the same time have innovative mechanisms that generate income and that establish a low emissions economy for those regions. We don't have a lot of resources to promote this change or this transition, so this is a challenge. This is the first aspect I wanted to highlight today when talking about reducing emissions. This is a global challenge, I believe, finding the key for this change from an economic perspective, mostly starting with these strategies to value biodiversity and resources through incentives or strengthening the sustainable supply chain, social and biodiversity chains. We have this traditional knowledge here, and this is urgent as strategic actions of control. We cannot let go of one thing without having clear commitments that will bring us gains. This is the tripod of sustainable development. You need to preserve natural resources. You also need to increase gains in the economy, and you need to have compatible social development. However, currently, we know that the role of governors has become increasingly important in this agenda. Here in our region, the governors have set up a consortium of governors of the region called Amazônia Legal, the Legal Amazon, and we have commitments to restate our role in the reduction of deforestation, of illegal fires and wildfires, and we have reinforced the need of a huge global pact that allows us to develop mechanisms that are compatible with our vocation, with our calling. An ecologic zoning, economic zoning. This is at the heart of several environmental problems that we face. This problem connected to land issues, the land rights, and we have traditional indigenous populations, the Quilombola, who descend from the slaves. Riverine communities have to be protected. and other development points have to move forward. We need to modernize, and I want to make clear that we will always respect our environment legislation, but we need to modernize licensing processes, mostly those that can leverage low emission businesses that are compatible with Brazil's ambitions regarding our emissions reductions commitments. States have also been working in a very organized manner, both in fighting illegal actions, and there is an economic challenge, of course. We have a highly attractive economy in terms of exports. Our economy is based in commodities, and the recovery of the economy has been taking place for the use of land, or through the path of the use of land, and not through technologies. We need to find this compatibility so that we can bring economic development, but we have to consider environmental matters. This is really important. It's a complex public policy, and it's key for the objectives that we have as a state of Amazonas and as a nation. Thank you, Ana Cristina, and we are available. I hope I have contributed to this debate.
Thank you very much, Eduardo Taveira, for your contributions. They're always welcome, giving us the backdrop of sustainable development, the efforts in controlling deforestation. That is extremely important. Excellent that you highlighted that in the opening of this event. I'd like to invite everyone for the second block, where we will bring local experiences from the states, and we'll have the privilege of listening to testimonials from the 3 governors of the largest Amazonian states, Amazonas, Mato Grosso, and Pará. I would also like to suggest that for us to have in mind this understanding that public policy decentralization is a trend, and this has taken place in health, in education, in housing, and states and municipalities then start having formal attributions to work on these policies, and alongside these attributions under the national plan, they also start having a dedicated budget. Under the environmental and climate management, there has been a decentralization established by the legal framework. All the states have their responsibilities, but there has not been a decentralization of the budget. The states are responding to this new block of responsibilities in a fantastic way, but I want to point out again, without balancing out the national budget. Let's see what Governor Wilson Lima from the state of Amazon shares with us about his view and how he has led this agenda in his state. It's going to be a quick video, 4-minute video, very enriching. I kindly ask that we see it now.
Gostaria de certificar que a gente
I would like to make sure that we have audio in the video first. Thank you.
Acho que nós vamos retomar a entrada do vídeo do
We
governo.
will come back to Governor Wilson Lima's video a bit later due to technological issues on the side of the speakers. We could not hear the audio, so we're taking it from the top.
brasileiras, o desmatamento na Amazônia.
Deforestation in the Amazon, especially in the state of Amazon, has increased significantly. Even with this scenario, the government of the state of Amazon has invested heavily to ensure that this economic growth may come as fast as possible, but that it should be done over sustainable foundations, ensuring that the commitments for emissions reductions that our state has committed to can move forward. In 2019, we launched the Amazonas Mais Verde program, not just for reduction of illegal deforestations and fires, the development of economic activities that are more compatible with our biome. The reductions goal established in this program is 15% by 2023. Another initiative that has been dealt with alongside the UK's embassy is our buy-in to Global Waste to Zero. It has a commitment to bring down to zero the emissions by 2050. I would also like to point out that the state of Amazon has been taking significant measures to reach these decreases in emissions on a long term. These actions go from restructuring of the legal framework, implementation of our state plan for fighting deforestation and fires. Moreover, we also have practical actions on the field as the strengthening of fire brigades, of municipalities that are most affected by deforestation, the publicizing and the incentive of more sustainable cultivation systems for family agriculture, remote monitoring of environmental offenses, integrated actions of firefighting involving several institutions of the state, task forces for environmental licensing and rural environmental licensing and other actions. On the other hand, I would also like to point out it's equally urgent for all countries, especially the wealthiest ones, may understand that the challenges that weigh heavily in regions such as ours to balance environmental conservation and economic growth are huge and with no parallel in the contemporary development model. So beyond all of these commitments that have been accepted, it's urgent to have a global effort so that we can have a standard of a cleaner economy adopted by all nations. I would like to conclude my speech highlighting that it's high time for a global pact for the Amazon. It's time to build a vision that is capable to cater not just to the results of decreasing deforestation, but also a global and innovative action to include indicators that ensure that for each standing tree, for each molecule of carbon that is not emitted, a riverine, a person from the field is also enjoying this wealth so that they can leave poverty, which is prevalent for over 50% of the people in the Amazon. It's important to connect control of deforestation with the reduction of poverty. Those are two huge challenges that Brazil faces today. It stood out, in my opinion, when the governor mentioned calling for a global pact for the Amazon. We're talking about much more than financial support that the world could provide for fighting deforestation and fires. We're talking about funding patterns, multilateral banking institutions, private banks that fund projects in the region. They have to be really careful with all the activities that are funding so that they're not causing deforestation. Governments and how they play a role on companies that buy products from the Amazon, they can privilege products that are not associated to deforestation. All efforts are added to reduce the loss in forests. Now we will hear what Governor Mauro Mendes from Mato Grosso tells us. He brings us the most highly expected news. The reduction of deforestation today is possible. It's a 2-minute video, and right after that, the Environmental Secretariat from the state of Mato Grosso, Maureen Lazzaretti, a lawyer with a great legacy in the Environmental Committee of the Brazilian Bar Association. She's been in the Secretariat of the Environment of the state of Mato Grosso. She'll talk a bit more detailed about what Governor Mauro Mendes will share with us. Please, if we can see the video from the Governor of Mato Grosso. The state of Mato Grosso is an important Brazilian agricultural producers for food. If we were a country, we would be the fourth largest producer of soybean in the world. We're a major corn and cotton and animal protein producers. The state of Mato Grosso has done that, preserving 62% of its land. That's what you heard, my friends. 62% of all the state of Mato Grosso is absolutely preserved as it were 500 years ago. Respecting the environment is important. We have here a manner of policy of fighting against any kind of illegal deforestation that is outside the Brazilian legal framework. We reduced 41% of such activity from 2020 to 2021. We are implementing at this point one of the most ambitious and cutting-edge programs, again, most ambitious, audacious, cutting-edge program of carbon neutrality in our state. By the COP summit, probably in October, we will be presenting this to the world. Our commitment, the state of Mato Grosso, one of the major states of the Amazon region in our country, with great environmental assets, major assets, and we would like to invite the world, invite all to be role models, as Mato Grosso is a role model, producing great amounts of food, respecting the environment, and bringing its contribution to the reduction and neutralization of carbon emissions in our state, in our country, and in our planet. Thank you so much. Ana, if I may already start, first and foremost, good morning to all of you who are here with us, watching us. I'd like to greet all speakers on behalf of my colleague Eduardo Taveira. Say it's a great joy to be here talking a bit about the state of Mato Grosso. I would also, before talking specifically about our state and break down a little bit of what our governor talked about, I want to talk about the commitment of Brazilian states with climate change. I have the joy of heading the Brazilian Association of State Environmental Agencies, and 17 Brazilian states have signed a commitment letter to climate changes. And so we have in the Brazilian Association a number of activities, monitoring activities, that Brazilian states have played a major role in emissions reduction. I believe few people know about this. I invite everyone to visit the ABIMA webpage and get to know a little bit of the work that we have done for this agenda. Talking about the state of Mato Grosso now, as our governor Mauro Mendes pointed out, Mato Grosso is known as a giant in terms of production because we feed approximately 10% of the world population, but we are also giants in terms of conservation, over 62% of our territory. This happens due to the strict policy of the state government to ensure production, but also fighting strong against illegal deforestation and just as likely other environmental infractions. And to become a role model, to collaborate somehow with the sustainable production, the state of Mato Grosso has a strategy, political, institutional strategy. All of our actions are concentrated in the PCI strategy, in Portuguese, produce, conservation, and inclusion, production, conservation, inclusion. This is a structure by the government of Mato Grosso, but we also have the NGOs, the communities, the production sector, and the main goal is to get the tripod of sustainability to happen, to take place all over. Production has to be associated to natural resources conservation, proper use of natural resources, and inclusion of growers, indigenous communities, riverine communities, traditional communities, small growers, all of them that in one way or another are part of the Mato Grosso production chain. This PCI program has goals that are completely aligned with what we're talking about today. Fighting against illegalities, low emissions, improvement in the production system, and commitments that have been bound to, along with the conservation agenda. Producing sustainably is the focus of our state of Mato Grosso. But of course, in order to do that, we have to fight against illegalities as one of the tripods. Our state has invested not just in fighting deforestation, but also in environmental permissions, in implementing public policies that may support and ensure that the production takes place under what the legislation foresees and what good environmental practices also give us. So since the early 2019, we have invested in implementing the forestation code, forest code. We're one of the states with the highest percentage of regularized rural properties, even with an environmental regularization program implemented with our own system, with a lot of investment from the government sector, but also engagement from the private sector. In the agenda of fighting illegal deforestation in 2019, under Governor Mauro Mendes' first year in office, we invested in a strategy to be more efficient using information technology. So today, with our deforestation technological control system, we can detect in 24 hours any deforestation focus, and we have a whole governance and planning structure that is triggered, from a preliminary automatic control, sending an email to farmers or growers who are registered in the state platforms, all the way through effective actions in the field from environmental inspectors. And under this production scenario, fighting illegal deforestation in our state, when we identify illegal actions out in the field, only in the year of 2020, we have over 300 pieces of equipment that were taken away from the field, and they were used in fighting forest fires. So by the 15th of September, we were able to reduce 54% of heat focuses throughout the whole state. And most of that was with the use of equipment that was arrested in deforestation actions. So this whole action, the efficiency strategy, fighting against illegalities, allowed us to have a reduction of 20% in deforestation warnings or flags in the 2020-2021 years, showing that if the state can structure its public policies associating strong fighting against deforestation and supporting the productive sector, we can evolve in this policy, fighting legal offenses and producing under the sustainable paradigm. This is a huge challenge, and all of the actors have to be in this agenda. Thank you so much. Thank you for the calling, Secretary Maureen. All actors have to play their role in this agenda. We need the government, we need society, we need the international community. I loved your emphasis on the legality. Most of the deforestation that takes place today, which is a major part of the emissions for greenhouse gases in Brazil, come from deforestation, and that is illegal deforestation. The good news, it's that it is done by few. The Federal University of the state of Minas Gerais published a fantastic article mapping out the source of deforestation. And the researcher identified a number of about 10% of producers who are responsible for most of the illegal deforestation. So that's where our hope lies. That's where the possibility of controlling this border lies, of bringing legal production dissociated from deforestation. Before we move on to the state of Pará, I'd like to reply to one of our participants who asked about the Mais Limpo, the cleaner program of the UN. He asked for examples. Wilson Tadeu Lopes. Edivaldo Pereira, she corrects herself. Natura will present the case in a few minutes. They have a cleaner production program. So we're moving forward. I would like to ask to hear a bit of Governor Eldo Barbalho from the state of Pará, another major state and with much deforestation. Let's see how they're handling it.
Hello, my name is Elder Barbalho. I'm the governor of the state of Pará. This is the second state in terms of dimensions in Brazil and the largest population in the region of the Amazon. We are sure that the challenge of restricting the increase in temperatures in the planet is our major challenge for this generation. The state of Pará is the one that emits most greenhouse gas. Our emissions are directly connected to forests and open areas. And we have 15% coming from cattle raising. 95% of our emissions are directly connected to the rural area. And in this context, with a broad participation of civil society, in 2020, we built our state policy of climate changes, mitigating emissions with a high level of government planning and assuming a commitment, making a commitment. From this climate policy, we've built a macro strategy that establishes a sector plan to change land use and agriculture. This is called Amazônia Now plan. As the name says, now, agora, refers to a priority in the presence of the state in the field and also in terms of financial resources. We hear different sectors of civil society, the production sector, and also the industry so that we can act in the short term and establish medium and long-term strategies as well. Climate emergency is very great in our state. 75% of our population lives in the countryside of our state, in rural areas, and agriculture and cattle raising is a reality in our economy. Therefore, we have to make it as sustainable as possible. We have a state that is faced with social and economic challenges. We need a plan that takes into account the social and economic challenges of our state, and also the environmental dimension. The Amazônia Now plan has 4 components, and I will mention all of them. Command, control, and surveillance. Most of our emissions come from activities that we know are illegal. Environmental and land regularization, because Pará has 39 million hectares of areas that are inhabited, and we need a land organization in order to have development. The economic development and also the evolution in a way of produce, showing that development is not equal to destruction, and also climate financing. All these activities, we need to adjust to generate the desired impact. And we have a target of emissions for 2026, and we've started in 2020 the execution of this plan, and in 1 year, we have reached concrete results. The state of Pará has a reduction of 12% in deforestation from August 2020 until June 2021, when compared to the previous year. And the fight to illegal deforestation has increased by 6% this year. The state of Pará has a commitment to social development based on a green model and of protecting the Amazon and focusing on the bioeconomy. The international community has to look at bioeconomy as a historic moment in the connection between people and nature. We have to change our energy matrix, and we need to identify and use new materials and discover new active principles The fact is that we are at the brink of a revolution in our way of producing and relating to the environment. The state of Pará, in the month of October, we will host a World Summit of Bioeconomy. We will launch our state strategy, and this is the first state of Brazil to do this in a tailor-made way for our own reality. We will launch the strategic base so that us, as a society, the private sector, and different levels of government, we can build a state plan for bioeconomy with concrete medium, long, and short-term actions. This is a transition, an economy transition towards a low-carbon economy and human and social development. We will have the opportunity to show Brazil and the world what is the bioeconomy that we wish to develop in our state, a bioeconomy that's focused on nature-based solutions that comes from this broad genetic and biodiverse assets that we have in the region of the Amazon, and also considering our traditional knowledge, and most of all, the indigenous populations. An innovative economy with high standards in research and strengthening our production chains. Recently, we've adhered to the Race to Zero campaign, global campaign, and we have worked hard to structure our system in order to meet the necessary requirements to access payment resources connected to results, and also the voluntary CO2 market. And we've built a sound climate policy. We will only be successful in decarbonization of our economy if we do this by rethinking our way of producing, bringing together society, the private sector, and the government, searching for sustainable development. But it cannot be any type of development. We have to dialogue with our diversity and with the human characteristics of our state and valuing our cultural and genetic assets. The state of Pará is working with a lot of drive and having a lot of strategy in building public policies that allow us to look into the economic social development agenda while at the same time mitigating the huge challenges that we face in terms of climate and environment. We want to support the building of a virtual cycle of development that addresses social economic matters and also development for the 26 million inhabitants while we preserve our standing forest. We believe in uniting efforts to ensure fair, balanced, and collaborative development. We are united. We are bringing together efforts for an Amazon that goes towards a green economy and that embraces and faces its huge challenges, and an Amazon that is able to build a new cycle. Mitigation and adaptation to climate change will be focused on social economic development. So we've heard the three governors of the main states in the region of the Amazon, and they are active in fighting deforestation. We see that what they say is very similar, which is good. It shows that they are aligned in their efforts to fight emissions and to reach emissions neutrality, and also to promote development. These states have to face social difficulties, of course, with a more dynamic economy. And it is a challenge, as I said, to decentralize environmental management and also financial limitations. We don't have enough human resources. We don't have enough inspectors. We don't have enough people to look at the protected areas and to fight fires. We do not have enough financial resources. International cooperation does not meet these demands because we cannot inject resources in the public budget. They cannot be used to pay for payrolls. When we look at the climate issue, we need to look at the reform of our states, new ways that allow us to have a more efficient government management. The PCI, and Secretary Maureen mentioned that PCI is an example. This is a new way of working. The state forced to fight deforestation in the state of Pará. This is a new institution. These are resources that came from the Lava Jato anti-corruption operation. We also have the fund for the Amazon, which was created by the state of Pará. This is a new mechanism. Amazonas had a system to protect areas, and that's what we have to strive for. Ways to allow states to respond to these challenges in terms of development without emitting CO2. And also the private sector is facing this agenda, and that's what we are going to discuss right now. A while ago, we had another discussion, and we have here today with us three important guests. Roberto Vac is going to talk about the Amazon Consultation. This is a large civil society group that is very proactive. Then we will have Paulo Pianez, Head of Sustainability at Marfrig. Marfrig is a food industry. They produce beef in Brazil. And they are very active in the Amazon. They are at the avant-garde in establishing targets so that the beef we eat is not connected to deforestation. And then we have Keivan Macedo from Natura, Head of Sustainability from Natura. He will talk about the commitment to life, which is a commitment to sustainability. And he will tell us about how Natura deals with forest assets and the Amazon communities, focused on a new development agenda, which is based on biodiversity. You can send your questions through the chat, and at the end, we will have a Q&A session. Our next guests will have 10 minutes each. Roberto Vac, please, you have the floor.
Muito obrigado. Privilégio estar aqui.
Thank you very much. It is a huge privilege to be here with you this morning. I have the honor to talk about the Amazon Consultation. And as you mentioned, Anna, in a way, we mobilize civil society, also universities, and also businesses with topics connected to the climate challenge. In this specific case, the Amazon Consultation is what I'm going to cover right now. So it is a huge pleasure to hear about the mobilization and the work of states, and also listen from companies. This is what represents Brazilian society in the challenge that we are facing. Brazilian society is very much engaged with this topic. It is very much connected to the Amazon, more than we imagine. And I don't want to be very specific, connected to what we are living in our political realm and the political image that Brazil has right now. The Brazilian society is very much engaged. I'm not going to go into details about the Amazon Consultation. The Amazon Consultation is a group of companies, people, and the academy. We are all mobilized to work for the Amazon. Currently, we have over 400 leaders in the Amazon Consultation. And if we add the coalition to that, it's even more people, hundreds of people connected to these topics. This group of people in the Amazon Consultation is focused on four main pillars. What is the development model that is appropriate for a completely new situation that the world is facing, which is valuing our natural assets, our natural resources, completely connected to social resources, to people, and also to cultural elements? What is this model? This is a completely new model, different from previous development models that we had in the Northern Hemisphere. Brazil has the privilege of being able to lead a world effort in creating development models that bring about a new balance and value, all the social environmental elements at a very high standard. We cannot imagine this debate without an intense participation of the business sector. And we will hear two examples in a minute. These new concepts, these new visions, as you mentioned, Anna, they demand for a new institutional arrangement, for new governance mechanisms, both in a local city level and also at a state level, the relationship also with the federation, and also in the relationship between Brazil and the rest of the world. Several multilateral movements are including the Amazon in the world geopolitical scenario. The Amazon consultation dared to imagine that the spiral you see on the screen, this is a spiral that brings together different fronts of knowledge. And we need to dive deeper into all of them. The Amazon is extremely complex. And I'm not going to say the Amazon. We have several Amazons, I would say, in the plural. So having more knowledge about this region is key. This involves governance, the role of the armed forces, the flow of financial resources, as you mentioned, Anna, budgets and limited budgets, public policies, the actions of the business sector, civil society. The world of science and technology is a major pillar to face this challenge. The role of culture and society is critical and it's undervalued. We have general development indicators, the use of soil, the organization of the land, climate change and the connection to everything we see, also education. So these are different fronts that are somehow being valued by the Amazon consultation. And the role of this consultation is not to produce knowledge, it's to build bridges between people that build this knowledge. So decentralizing this debate. Several work groups are involved, and here you see several names and several logo marks, and the participation of all of them is very important. I just wanted to show you how we are divided. It's a group that works with land organization, another group works with the narratives about the Amazon. This is really important because the Amazon has a place in our imagination as a Brazilian society. The Amazon is not what is left from Brazil. From a geopolitical perspective, it is the center of Brazil, and this balance has to be acknowledged. So narratives are essential. Then we have culture and the presence of this cultural wealth in our region. This is all part of a combination of that with the bioeconomy, as the governor has just mentioned. So there is an attempt to create an agenda for Amazon development. We are proposing this agenda for the development of the Amazon, and it is connected to several different fronts. I'm not going into details today, but essentially we consider that there are at least 4 different situations. We have conserved areas, then we have transition areas or areas that demand recovery, that are in recovery. Then we have converted areas and we have cities. Each one of them has different economic premises or assumptions. The world of transition and regeneration, valuing biodiversity. Then we have converted areas, mostly connected to traceability. And then we have cities and the connection between cities and these different territories. For each one of these 4 pillars, we have specific actions. And of course, I'm not going to read everything, but we have specific actions in economy, then specific actions in tax and financial mechanisms. Then we have land ordering and land tenure, science and technology. Infrastructure is very much relevant, and it's a huge challenge because we have so many new initiatives and concepts. So for each of these 4 pillars, we discuss different aspects connected to what we call structuring action fronts, such as command and control, education, access to quality healthcare, public safety, and the new frontiers to adapt to climate change, and also transversal areas or actions such as governance, local institutional capacity, the role of subnational entities, as we've just heard, interaction with international bodies, and also the value of culture, appreciating the Amazon culture. So this is just an overview of what is this movement. And this is available both on Instagram and in our website. Thank you very much for your attention.
Paulo Pianês, por favor, a palavra é sua.
Paulo Pianês, you have the floor. Thank you so much, Roberto. Thank you, Ana. Once again, now it's good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's extremely interesting when we hear all of the previous presentations, how this is in sync with what, in our opinion, is the role of the private sector to develop and implement. Among everything that's been mentioned here, the climate urgency, this need to fight deforestation, this paramount need. At Marfrig, we started pondering a bit on what had been done over the last 13 years since 2009, and I participated from the beginning. All of the approach that had taken place up until then was very much focused on the principle of destructing. You can, you cannot. You can or you cannot. When we talk about the cattle raising in agribusiness, in the last 13 years, we created 2 realities. One of the production that caters to higher levels of sustainability attributes, and another one that was left on the curb. They work almost as a illegal production, and that's where most of the problem and the challenge lies in terms of reconciling the production with the environment. So here at Marfrig, despite all the actions that we had already been established in the last 10 years, in 2019, we started understanding this whole context a bit better. More specifically, the cattle raising backdrop in the Amazon. Before that, we said, well, we have to dive deep into what the Amazon is, what it represents. The legal Amazon has 28 million inhabitants, 13% of the Brazilian population. 25 million people live off the biome, almost 9% of the Brazilian GDP. And at the other end, when we look up to the cattle and agri-production, we have 571,000 farms, 86% of them have less than 100 hectares. 56% of growers are over 55 years of age. 16% of them never went to school. And out of the whole, only 4% came to a university, to higher education. Only 7% have proper use of the soil, make use of proper practices. So when you look at the agricultural production, cattle production in this territory, we see that before the environmental issue, there's a social issue that is significant, that is severe. So with that in mind, we started studying a bit more. So we have to develop or launch or put together a program here at Marfrig to face that. First, we have to start off from a new assumption, not the one of exclusion. we have to kick off from commitments that will bring new pacts with society, and developing pillars that will support the program that can address these challenges. So that's what we did along with the IDH, the academia, the territorial science consultants that helped us to understand the social context of this region, where Marfrig, most, 40% of the cattle, that is animals that are slaughtered in Brazil, is in the region. So we had to understand the region and then put together a program that could address these challenges. From the assumptions point of view, we break away from the exclusion assumption, and our approach now is one of inclusion. How can we understand this backdrop, and instead of just excluding, how can we understand the context and help these farmers, growers, cattle raisers to continue being a part or become a part of the Marfrig supply chain? That was the first assumption. With that in mind, we also needed to reestablish commitments. Yes, by 2025, we'll have our supply chain fully free of deforestation with low carbon practices. The production has to be 100%. And maybe what's most important amongst those commitments is to have full transparency of everything that we're developing over to society. So we have to have clear metrics, and the results have to be shared with all of the actors who are part of the supply chain, and obviously part of the actors we deal on a daily basis as a company, as Marfrig. And for all of that to take place, we also had to establish over which pillars we would work on so that these challenges could be addressed and the questions could be solved. We heard before here during our discussion, it is key that there should be resources, both from state level, from the private sector, resources directed towards this production. Access to resources, to funding is key. So what did we conclude? Out of these many producers, I said 86% of them are small producers. Many of them, of these farmers, do not have access to the regular credit market in Brazil. As we have seen, most of them does not make proper use of the soil, of the land. Therefore, when that takes place, they will not be able to implement the necessary means in technology for a more profitable, more productive activity, and avoiding deforesting new areas. On the other hand, considering that access to funding is key, we'll talk about genetic improvement in grassland management, better techniques for us not to need opening new areas, deforesting new areas again. So the plan focuses significantly on creating new mechanisms so that resources may come to these producers, especially to the small cattle raisers, farmers. So we have had broad discussions with the banking industry in Brazil, significant conversations, so that we might create new funds, new means, so that resources may arrive at the tip, and these resources, these financial mechanisms should value the standing forest, what you have there when you need collateral, and usually the standing forest and everything that it can bring, that's not taken into account when a traditional financial institution grants a loan. So those resources will enable us to address the necessary actions so that this producer, this grower, farmer, to be profitable. We don't believe in sustainable production if before that it's not profitable. It doesn't bring any profit to those who produce. It's not appropriate to think that these two things are not connected. So obviously, there's a number of initiatives. I'm just going to mention some examples in English that we've been to address all of that. So initiatives that go from establishing integrated production models. We have been working significantly with IDH, with the sustainable calf raising in the north of the state of Mato Grosso, focused on 150 cattle raisers. We're going to come to 300 soon enough. So it's a trial balloon, but we're going to escalate afterwards. But it's feasible, transforming a small farmer's reality, those who dedicate in the first part of the cattle raising, which is the birthing, so obeying all of the precepts of a low carbon sustainable production. You integrate that farmer to other larger farmers who go through the other steps of cattle raising, who integrate the slaughter industry, integrating the retailers who will distribute the product, integrating consumers, because then you will communicate this type of production. And so the consumer will have in mind that they are an important decision factor when they pick the product off the shelf. They determine if the product will be consumed or not. And if it's consumed or not is what gets the whole chain, the whole supply chain to move. So testing, running pilot programs is key. And we have something already along those lines well addressed and bringing results. Something else we've also been doing is establishing science as the basic parameter to have this knowledge. What has to be done is huge in Marfrig. Only in the Amazon region, we have 16,000 suppliers. If we count indirect suppliers, it goes to 176,000 suppliers spread over a humongous quantity of land. So where are we going to work first? On the whole. So through science, through a methodology developed by Agroecony, we developed a heat map, a risk map, where we use government official information, we overlap and identify where the most critical areas are for the biomes, in the Amazon biome in this case, where we have more cattle raising, overlapping with deforestation, grazing maps, of native vegetation maps, with social maps showing where the indigenous populations lie, the riverine populations, the Quilombola populations. And out of that, we establish a level of risk. And when we can identify what that risk is, then we can direct actions that we have been putting together in a more assertive fashion. So when we talk about having traceable production, by 2025, year on year, Marfrig has already been making significant headway. To have an idea, today 62% of the source, of the origin of animals, we know at Marfrig. It's known. We know exactly from the moment the animal is birthed all the way to the slaughter. And so we established the goals year on year. So by the end of this year, 100% of producers and indirect producers who are in higher risk areas will be mapped, traced, with deforestation actions already taking place. By the end of 2022, we'll have the high risk and medium risk and so forth, all the way we come to the low risk in 2025. So that's a practical way, powerful way to understand the social economic backdrop for such regions, to connect that to the need of concrete environmental actions, and that being said, understanding under the 3 scopes, and more specifically here, the scope number 3, the levels of emissions that we have within the supply chain. So Marfrig has been working hard under scope 3, establishing robust goals, science-based goals, and they will be submitted to the science-based targets, because we believe that focus on emissions reductions, establishing the means for this production to truly be a low carbon production, can be hand in hand also with a production of zero conversion. We will be clearly able to reach at a certain level to carbon neutrality in few years, if not neutrality, significant reduction of emissions throughout the supply chain. And we conclude that brings it back home, and that's the reason for the company also to exist. It's been inspiring the industry to adopt similar plans. If we look at what's been announced by the industry as a whole, we will see that the approach towards this territory jurisdictional approach in a transparent fashion, where we can share with society as a whole. That's basically what I wanted to share with you, and we can go deeper in just a bit. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paulo. I think you brought the sophistication that the technological sophistication and business sophistication that the actions require. Roberto had talked about political articulation and engagement of actors for the consultation. I want to thank Wilson Tadeu Lopes da Silva, Virginia Mirtes, who wrote messages complementing the results of these companies, what they heard here from society. I want to remind you that COP is also listening to us. The Paris Agreement foresees the non-state parties. So we are here contributing to the global discussion, being heard by them, and as a part of the challenges and commitments that the Paris Agreement also faces. Now, Ivan, if you have the word talking about Natura, Keivan Macedo. Hello, all. Thank you, Sebeds, for the invite. It's a pleasure being here, sharing with my fellow panelists about these practices. I'll try to approach and talk about how this connection started, how to bring this climate agenda with the biodiversity agenda all together, this whole business model that's been proposed. So I'm going to go back to the year of 1992 to an extremely important event. Even in Brazil, we hosted Rio 92, Eco 92. It's going to turn, we're going to have the Rio Plus 30 event at its anniversary. So we started conceiving and pondering about the importance of a company. What role should a company play to demonstrate in its business behavior their choices and attitudes that should be reflected upon the business model. Years later, we inaugurated a line of products called Ecos, bringing a new idea of how to introduce and incorporate Brazilian biodiversity assets, most of the Amazon biome, through proven science that these assets would bring properties and the benefits of better performance. But more than that, how we could value. We always forget about the fourth dimension of sustainability, culture, how we could value traditional knowledge of these riverine local populations who know the secrets of the forest and who bring a bit of these properties with them. So this model brings an advantage of even to Brazilians of how to share these assets. Açaí, for example, some people didn't know Preprioca, Murumuru, Ancuúba, Andiroca. Those are the advantages. And under a model that generates economic feasibility for a productive model that can foster the economy of the standing forest, bringing more added value to all of those in the supply chain, ensuring not just biome conservation, but ensuring even for regeneration. There are some cases of how we were able to deliver a project that would bring greater value added for the local population. In the case of the seeds of Ukuba, with only 50% of the seed collection, we could generate 3 times more value for the local population instead of cutting down the tree, which was the traditional model. So a species that was in the early 90s listed as a under extinction threat, and thanks to this new sustainable development chain, we were able to get that tree to now be out of that list of endangered species. So we have a word we call internally social biodiversity. We understand that biodiversity cannot be dissociated from the social aspects of local populations. At the end of the day, they're there on a daily basis. So it's important for the model to empower and to integrate all of them, to bring value generation technology, to have local development. Paulo mentioned a few figures. We always talk about social inequality. And when we go to the Amazon biome, it seems that they're always increased in the same proportion, geographically speaking, that we have compared to the rest of the country.
So this is also a contribution in terms of how you generate resources. How do you apply the principles of fair trade in order to acknowledge the value of this activity? How we provide technical skills for these populations? How do we add value so that these populations incorporate the processing of these ingredients so that we not only improve the quality of the ingredients that are provided, but also we increase the income of these populations precisely because they add value. How do we add traceability and transparency to this chain? And more importantly, we have to align these policies and guidelines to the principle of biologic diversity. So how do we pay for this processing? Whether through access to genetic assets or to associate traditional knowledge, Natura is performing these payments since 2004. Even before we had the Nagoya Protocol, or even before Brazil ratified this protocol. So building this model allows us to engage and provide more visibility. This is an important word that we've heard today. Mobilization, collective mobilization from the business sector, from the civil society, from the public sector, joining forces. At the end of the day, we are speaking about a systemic problem, a problem that affects society as a whole. And this is not just Brazilian society. There's no Paris Agreement if we do not talk about the Amazon, the importance of this biome and the importance of having actions in different scales, but actions that add to each other. Part of the models we've learned and tested and implemented in the last few years, these models are connected to different realities. We have the Programa Amazônia, which was created in 2011. This is about adding value to a region by bringing an agenda of local development and innovation. There's the creation of a production pole, and around this production pole in the city of Benevides, we have several riverine communities that provide or supply these products. We've also created a seal, a stamp of responsible production, not just focusing on environmental aspects and respect and preservation and conservation, but it also considers everything we mentioned regarding the social aspect. We have some experiences to share on how we increase our basket of assets and how we improve the revenue for local populations, not just through fair trade and not just by paying for this processing, but also by bringing this climate agenda. we have to acknowledge carbon credit projects that are connected to the national park in the region of Xingu in Brazil, and that involves major, large producers. How can we bring about a new production process? It's called the Muvuca process. How do we create a seed bank that empowers a network of women and increases their income? How do we plant native species while at the same time working with small farmers to pay for environmental services? And that's when we bring together the individual effort and we acknowledge the preservation that small farmers do. And on the other hand, we engage collectively, the whole society. So compensation is not just for the individual effort, but also for the collective result. At the end of the day, there's no point in one individual farmer doing their part if their neighbor is deforesting. So we've been successful in these efforts. I wanted to share some figures. Between 2018 and 2020, we've managed to have 1/5 of the deforestation rates in these producers when compared to surrounding areas. So yes, a well-designed program, a program that brings about awareness and engagement and brings local producers to the table, that really allows us to have this program be successful. It is a model that can be replicated. Another interesting experience I wanted to share is the creation of a agroforest program for the production of palm. We know there were some cases of Indonesia and Malaysia, and the integration model with different species, it improves productivity and yield and also increases resilience. These last 2 years of pandemic, we've heard so many people talking about resilience, right? How can we create resilient systems, resilient economies? And in this context, Natura establishes targets. The contribution of these productions chain preserves 2 million hectares of forest. This is half of the area of the Netherlands. We want to expand that for 3 million hectares. We work with thousands of communities or tens of communities, and we want to include the Amazon and other countries such as Peru and Colombia. And I wanted to leave a final message, which is important. This is a platform that provides visibility not only to the decrease in deforestation, but the idea is to acknowledge regeneration and restoration actions. We have a partnership with MAPA Biomas and Hockey Lab. And I think the question is, how do we align conservation, regeneration? How do we decrease social inequalities in a region where that happens? And how do we add value and development to these local communities? Thank you. Thank you, Keivan, for talking about Natura's efforts. João Carlos Trinks in YouTube's comments, he made a very important comment about Natura on how you connect both people and nature interests. So congratulations, we echo his comment. I also want to thank for the many comments we've received. And I have a question for you. So first, Bernadette Guimarães, she made an important comment about sustainability and ensuring that the seed and fruit extraction will not affect the availability of food for animals. This is very much connected to sustainability, Bernadette, and this is treated in accreditation standards. This is the topic of scientific research, and anyone that works with a seed extraction is looking at that. This is environmental sustainability. Carmen, you state your concern about land and degradation and illegal deforestation. I invite you to look at the Brasil Clima Floresta Coalition and the Amazon Consultation. Brenda Brito from Amazon, she is talking about some bills that are in Congress right now trying to prevent the risk that you mentioned, which is illegal occupation of land. Valnir Giaconelli, he has a very interesting question, and I'm going to ask this question for you if you want to answer. And he is congratulating you for your work, and he asks, how can we do that in an integrated manner? How can we show this as a Brazilian result? How can we organize all these initiatives and compile them, present them as a rating or as an index that shows decrease in emissions from a country level perspective? And he's talking about the relationship with the federal government. I wanted you to comment on that, please, whoever would like to volunteer.
Ana, eu posso fazer
I can begin, Anna. This is Eduardo Taveira, and I'm going to be brief. I believe we have two scenarios. First, the subnational perspective. There is a very important role which we cannot forget. We have to look at this from a positive perspective, which is what's going on in different regions. So these consortiums of governors. And I wanted to highlight the agenda from the Governor's Climate and Forests Task Force. We've been working for more unit and more union. We have to find common ground, and that's our focus. Different states, of course, diverge in some points, but we decided to follow a common agenda. And this agenda encompasses sound commitments to reduce emissions. So I think we have to bet on these dialogue mechanisms. And we have the Brazilian Association of Environment Bodies. This is ABEMA, the acronym in Portuguese, and we are in dialogue with the federal government. Joaquim Leite, the minister, has had meetings with different environment secretaries from the Amazon region. We are discussing with the federal government, and I think it's important to highlight that, yes, there are achievements and advancements in at the subnational level, and we believe there is an important channel for dialogue. There's also the recovery, and I really enjoyed what Paulo said, Paulo and Kevin, you know, the urgence of economic models that ensure sustainability and the reduction of poverty. So yes, we are all speaking about the same objectives. So although we do face major challenges, I am still optimistic. And I think that this event right here is another channel for debate and to highlight that, yes, there is union, there is a common ground, and this allows us to understand subnational aspects. We also have NGOs, we have Under2 and SEBED's huge support, and all of us are protagonists somehow, and that's how we should enter this debate. We have a lot in common. And, you know, I'm very pleased. I really like the question from the colleagues that are watching us on YouTube. Thank you for this reflection. Thank you, Mr. Taveira. Valnir is saying that Brazil is part of these conferences, and Brazil formally reports on its targets and its advancements. And in the next conference in Glasgow, Brazil will do this once again. We expect action plans. So yes, we have to be aware of these national reports. That's the official numbers. Oftentimes there are debates about these figures and numbers. These debates happen at a national level, and they strengthen the country and society. And there are some official reports that are presented by the Brazilian government. I have an additional question, Roberto. And Roberto, there is someone praising the initiatives of the companies, but the question is about other initiatives. How can these other initiatives join the Amazon consultation? Well, thank you for giving me the floor. I wanted to mention exactly that. What we're going through right now is a very interesting mix, I would say. It's a broad mobilization from society. around the Amazon. And it's a mix. I would say, if life gives you a lemon, you can make a lemonade. And this is a lemonade, I would say. We're going through a very difficult moment right now in our country, and we have to make a lemonade out of this. CEBEDS has represented in the last few years a very strong power in mobilizing companies and more recently also finance institutions or the finance sector. And that is becoming several network movements. More recently, we have, of course, the Amazon Consultation. Being part of the Amazon Consultation, if you want to be part of that, there's only one condition. You have to want to be part of that. The goal is that the Amazon Consultation is an area or a space to debate different visions about the Amazon. We want to strengthen this debate. We want to strengthen connection between different initiatives. We want all this knowledge to be more consistent and more deep. And little by little, we want to create perspectives about the Amazon, and we want to build a long-term project for the country as a whole, so that we work intensely with this natural and cultural assets that we have. All these initiatives are translated into network movements, and we believe these network movements are very important. Brazil has been a leader in network movements for many years now, different from the image that we currently have as a country. Brazil has always been very respected on how we mobilize society around these topics. And I think so society is still mobilized. We have an amazing opportunity to value and acknowledge that. The only condition is to want to be part of these movements. These movements are open for anyone, and this engagement will allow us to create connections between people, which is key, and Brazilian society. We have different situations in Brazilian society, and we need to engage local communities. We have to take local communities into account in a very strong and intense manner. And from these dialogues and this engagement, that's where we build a long-term vision for the Amazon. Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you for the invitation as well. We are 6 minutes behind schedule, and we have 4 additional minutes before we finish at 12:40 Brazil time. So I wanted to use these 4 final minutes to ask both Paulo and Keivan, from a corporate perspective, can you tell us a little bit about the role of consumers? What is the role of consumers? How do consumers behave today, as beef consumers or as consumers of cosmetic and beauty products produced by Natura? How does that shape what your companies do, and what are you looking for from a future perspective? Well, I may begin. This is Paulo from Marfrig, and I wanted to give you, I wanted to make a comment that I think goes beyond Marfrig. I spent 11 years in a large retailer, so yes, I was in direct contact with consumers. 1 million tickets issued every day, 360,000 visits throughout a year. So that gives us a good idea of the behavior of consumers when we think about this topic. Well, what I lived in that company and what I live today at Marfrig, I see that the behavior of consumers is transforming. In Brazil, the environmental aspect is still not a purchase decision factor. People still ask, does that meet the quality standards that I want for my family? Is it safe, and does it fit my budget? Usually that's what people ask. But social and environmental aspects are becoming increasingly important in purchase decisions, mostly for younger audiences that are becoming consumers right now, and they will be future consumers. And the young consumers, and future consumers, for future buyers, we have to focus on them. For them, it will be completely different. These new consumers, our children, young people, they look at things from a very different perspective. The way they consume is completely different. And from a food perspective, it's urgent to work with food systems, the way we produce food and the way these products are consumed. When I talk about in natura meat, it does not mean that there will be no room for animal protein in the future. However, there will only be room for products that are produced in a way that everything we've discussed this morning is looked at. There will be other types of protein, other ways of consuming protein, and other than just animal protein. So how companies behave and position themselves in the face of such a radical change that will take place, social, environmental perspectives will become part of the decision-making process. If I may add briefly, I know that we are running out of time. I completely agree with Paulo. I think that consumers are playing an increasingly important role in demanding transparency and sustainable positioning from companies. We know that the relationship between companies and consumers, it's not just a consumption or a purchasing relationship. Consumers, mostly new generations, they want to share common values, common purposes. And that's how we expand our relationship, not just being a company that sells products and services. And we have to become advocates. We have to work for a common cause and a common good. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Keivan. Thank you, Paulo. I want to thank also the representatives of the governors of Amazonas, Pará, and Mato Grosso who were here with us this morning. I wanted to thank Marfrig, Natura, the Amazon Consultation. I want to thank the Governor's Climate and Forests Task Force, the Under 2 Coalition. I want to thank CEBEDES, the Brazilian Business Council for Sustainable Development, and all of you who watched this morning through YouTube. Thank you very much, and I wish us all the luck in facing these climate challenges. Thank you very much.